Valley record. So we'll move on to the first item of the agenda, which is the approval of the agenda and the addition of any late items. So Susanna, Eve, any comments on the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I think we have one late item coming in, which was sent out via email to everybody, which was a suggestion from the open house on Tuesday to have essentially it was phrased as a handing over of the keys ceremony on June 30th. And there's some correspondence that Gary has sent out on that. So would like to have that added to the agenda if everybody's in favor.
Sure.
Okay, so with the amendment to the late addition, motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are then on to the adoption of the minutes from the May 6th, 2021 inaugural board meeting, which are attached to our agenda package. Just making sure that everybody's had a chance to look at them, talk through. Any questions, adds, changes, deletions? Okay.
Looks good.
Motion to adopt the minutes from May 6th.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. So let us move into the meat of the agenda then, which item number 5 is reports. And the first report on the agenda is our interim administrator. So I'll turn this over to Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report is included in the agenda package. At the AGM, I read through it primarily, for the benefit of the public and that it was an AGM. I don't propose to read through it. Typically, it's really in 2 parts, giving you updates on the current status of the UBID CVRD conversion process. Much of the information in this report is not that significantly changed from my last report at the AGM a couple of weeks ago. A few new items. Those of you that attended the virtual open house 2 days ago, basically a lot of this was discussed. What I'd like to just focus on is an update on the board's strategic priorities. And again, I won't read through my report. I'll really just hit the high points. And firstly, in regards to the B parcels, adding B parcels to the tax roll issue, you'll see that on the agenda attached to my report, I've included the legal opinion from Peter Johnson that was previously discussed. So effectively, we're rising and reporting on that advice. That's the legal opinion which you've previously considered. You'll recall that the board at that meeting directed that we prepare an amendment bylaw to the 2005 assessment bylaw along the lines as recommended and suggested by Peter Johnson. So that bylaw is on the agenda later on this afternoon for consideration of the necessary readings. I concur that I think it is a worthwhile exercise to get that bylaw amendment in place. And it does not require the approval of the inspector, as I understand. It just requires the filing with the minister. So what it really is positioning UBID prior to conversion, getting us to a place where we've already done the necessary bylaw change to potentially add B parcels later in the year or whenever to the 2022 tax roll. So I do recommend that later on this afternoon, you give consideration to those readings. Next week, the senior administration from CVRD, myself, we are going to be having a conference call with the ministry. This is one of the items on the agenda. So basically what I've suggested is that consider the bylaw this afternoon, enact the necessary readings, and then I will be engaging the ministry. They're already aware of this. They're already aware of the legal advice, and they're aware of the bylaw potentially coming down. And I will be discussing next steps with the CVRD and with the ministry. I think Tuesday's our call, and I'll certainly be reporting back more to follow on this particular file. Okay. With respect to the subdivision bylaw, I did report out on this at the AGM. We have received a response from the CVRD on a previous motion of the board that the CVRD be requested after conversion to enact after conversion an amended version of bylaw number 264, which was the previous subdivision bylaw that was never registered with the ministry, amended as along the lines as recommended by our lawyer. The CVRD's responded. My response is in the report, or their response is in the report. And I draw your attention to the last sentence that says, should the UBID have interest in the regulations bylaw for the Union Bay Water Service, making specific reference to the Master Municipal Construction Documents standards, and an amendment to those bylaws, and these would be CVRD bylaws, could be considered following conversion on July 1st, 2021. So what I'm recommending is that the board, at today's meeting, formally respond. And I stand to be corrected, but I understand that the board would be supportive of this. And what I'd recommend is that you consider that, respond appropriately, and we can forward a letter to the CVRD right after the meeting. And that would give us plenty of time for a further discussion, at the very least at the next meeting of the conversion working group prior to June 30th. So I do recommend that the board respond to this particular item. I can go through the other three strategic priorities, or we can stop here and you can consider my advice and recommendation at this point in time. Mr. Chairman?
I would support myself stopping here and considering this one, but I will also consider the opinions of our other trustees as well.
Yeah, I as long as we can continue, as long as we come back to this one.
Okay.
I'm presuming we stop now and deal with it so that we don't come back.
Okay.
Eve, you okay with that?
Yeah, great.
Okay. So as Gary, sorry, and I just have to find my spot again here, as Gary is recommending, like the statement is, should the UBID have interest in the regulation bylaws for the Union Bay Water Service, making specific reference to the MMCD standards, an amendment to those bylaws could be considered following conversion on July 1st, 2021. The first thing that jumps to my mind as I read that is, why following July 1st?
Why what?
Is it possible for us to enact that change to that bylaw so that we
By
know it's
way of a
done?
motion?
What's
By
that?
way
of a motion, yes. And
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering too. And I'm just for absolute super duper assurity, I'd like to go down that route, just to make it crystal clear that this is what we want. And then we disappear, right? That's my big fear, is we legally kind of just evaporate. And the only thing that's left behind is that statement, because we're not able to pass it through the municipal bylaw. So I very much want to have some kind of strong motion in support of that, so we're not left high and dry.
Eve, your thoughts?
So to clarify what Susanna and you have said, are you saying that you want to amend our bylaw and put that in? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think CBRD is saying they would amend our bylaw once it became their bylaw, right? It gets turned over, that they would then add MMCD to our bylaw number 26.
And so
Or-
what are you two saying you want?
Do it as you bid before conversion.
Okay. Oh, I'm definitely in support of that because I didn't hear that they would. I heard they could.
So they would consider it, right?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
yeah, that's no guarantee. So
Yeah.
I'm totally into doing our well, I wanted to adopt the new bylaw that the previous board worked so hard to do. But so I'm definitely supporting this. Yeah.
Gary, can I flip back to you and say, I recall from our discussions that this bylaw would also not need to be registered?
The mechanics of that, I'm not entirely sure about, but I do get the board's intent here. I think the CVRD in their response is talking about making an amendment to their bylaws, which would cover post-conversion the Union Bay Water Service. But whether it would be to our bylaws or their bylaws, that's kind of the mechanics. What I'm understanding is that you're certainly wanting to see this language put in whatever appropriate bylaws it needs to be put into, and requesting that they consider doing it before the conversion date. That's what I'm hearing. And
They
we can
don't
make
have
it-
a bylaw, a development bylaw.
They have a number of bylaws
Yeah.
where they reference the standard, or they have a bylaw where they reference the standard. It's certainly not a water service bylaw, but they do reference it. But my understanding is they reference it in a way that they are guidelines. And I guess that's another consideration here. Is it how rigid is adherence to MMCD? And I can't profess to know MMCD well enough to say, does it cause undue hardship in certain circumstances? And does there need to be an additional flexibility that comes with consideration by the board or consideration by the planning department or whoever that may be? So, there is probably some complexity to this beyond just saying, make it so. And I guess, we do have one more meeting coming up where we can finally do this in June. So is this a direct Gary to find us the way that makes sure that this happens? An alternative is we pass a motion that directs CVRD, that says the board expresses in the strongest way to CVRD that we wish to have MMCD standards applied to some subdivisions with respect to our services.
That's what I think we should do. I really do.
Excuse me, sorry. Go ahead, Susanna, sorry.
It's broad, it's general. It isn't, we're not trying to write a legal document. It states clearly what the intention is. I think that is what we should do, and let it sort out in the doing of it the right way to do it.
I concur with that, Mr. Chairman. I understand the intent of the motion. I concur with that. And we request, strongly that serious consideration be done to doing this before the conversion date, if at all possible. We can, we're going to raise this issue with the ministry because, of course, they're involved in this to a certain extent. And certainly I can come back once this motion is passed, if it does, and it's communicated to the CVRD in terms of how we could do that potentially, or who would be doing it in the month of June, if they would agree to it. But I understand the intent, and I think that should be communicated to the CVRD. And that's kind of the response they're looking for. What do we want to do?
So I
And
second
who would
Ian's
be
motion.
sorry, Susanna, just before we form a motion, let's just make sure that we understand the fullness of it. Who would be best to write back? Is it you, Gary, or is it me?
If the board passes the motion, certainly it would typically come from myself on behalf of the board. But
That's
Mr.
good.
Chairman, I could have, put it under your signature.
No, I think it's more appropriate that it come from you because you've been leading this. So if the motion was something along the lines of the board instructs the interim administrator to communicate our desires to have MMCD standards included in the Union Bay Water Service bylaw, or any CBRD bylaw which would supersede that before June 30th, 2021,
Understood.
or something close to that, right?
Understood.
Susanna, Eve, did
Yep.
that sound like the right motion?
Well,
That-
no, that
No.
doesn't, that's not what you originally said. I'm for amending the bylaw ourselves. But, I can be outvoted.
So maybe we should clarify, because Eve, you were not there. The ministry did say if we amended the subdivision bylaw as our original intention was, at this one I'm referring to is the 264, the ministry would not approve that. Not
Yeah.
because of the content, but because of the fact that it's a bylaw from something that's going to be dissolved. So this is kind of trying to reach that same goal without relying on the ministry approving or not approving it.
So
Did I
wait a
do-
minute. No, I know that they wouldn't approve the new revamped bylaw. That I knew.
Yeah,
But you're saying that we need the province's approval to just amend the existing bylaw?
okay, no, so I did misunderstand what you were asking, Eve. You're talking about amending the existing, the old one.
Yeah, isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes.
We don't have a new one.
Yes, that is what we're talking about, is to, when we've been through this before, what we said that was the most substantial thing that was missing between the new and the old was the reference to a standard.
Right.
And the standard that is available without us creating our own is MMCD. And so
Yeah.
that the addition of MMCD to our old bylaw would substantially cover the intent of the new bylaw.
Okay, I didn't understand that. I'm glad we clarified that.
And the fact that they say it could be, we could say all day long that we want this to happen, but that doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Right, but don't we have to get municipal approval for that if we do that?
Provincial, you mean?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
I'm unclear on that. Gary, are you clear?
I'm not entirely clear, but I believe yes. I think the intent of the CVRD's response was to, do you want us to amend, does the CVRD want UBID to have the CVRD amend their bylaws, which would cover the Union Bay Water Service after conversion? I believe that's what they're talking about. They're talking about their bylaws. But certainly I can clarify with the ministry when I'm talking with them on Tuesday, if somehow UBID were to amend its bylaws, would approval of the ministry be required? What is their position on that? Because I'm
Well-
not entirely clear. And certainly every indication they continue to give is that this close to conversion, they're not amenable to really approving any amendments to our bylaws. But I can clarify that on Tuesday.
But yet, did you not say on the B parcel bylaw, we would be able to amend that without provincial?
That's correct. That one, we have legal advice that on that particular bylaw, there's different types of bylaws, but on that one, it would just require a filing. It basically is just a filing with them. Whereas there's other bylaws that would require the inspector's approval.
Mm.
And I believe, but this is certainly something, this is the mechanics of how to get this done. I think I understand the intent of the board's motion is something that I can clarify with both the CVRD and with the ministry on Tuesday.
So I think the motion here needs to be something along the lines of that, we're directing the administrator to prepare an amendment to the existing subdivision bylaw, provided that the bylaw does not, the amended bylaw would not require registration by the inspector. if the bylaw does require registration by the inspector, to prepare correspondence to the CBRD in its place, strongly expressing our interest in an amendment to that bylaw being prepared after conversion. How did
In
that
a
sound?
timely manner.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Ian?
So second, I second that.
Okay, any further comment on it? I'll take silence as consent and we move on to vote. So all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Gary, you all good?
Yes, understand, Mr. Chairman. With water treatment plant, the separate office washroom building, this really one is just a kind of a status update. As you know, we have done a request for quotations. The closure date is next Thursday, a week today at 2:00. We sent it out to 12 vendors, 4 or 5 of whom Dan McGill had previously solicited some expression of interest last year. Haven't received anything yet. I've received a couple of responses from vendors saying they'd love to help us out, but they're just too busy with the construction season going on. It's a very busy time for these vendors. So more to follow on that. A week from today, I'll hopefully have at least 2 or 3 proposals that we can go forward and come back to the board with a report. So more to follow on that one. On the building, yes.
I'll ask a question about that. The one company that happens to be my neighbor.
Right.
He mentioned to me yesterday or the other day that that you wanted a 36 by whatever building, and that's not a standard size. 40 is its standard size. So it would have to be custom made, which would considerably drive up the cost. Is there any news on that or?
No, I mean, that's a desired specification. That was basically, you know, in the list of specs that here's what we're looking for. That was based on the sketch that Dan McGill did last year.
Mhm.
But I expect that we will, or hopefully will, have some submissions which may not in all areas be exactly meeting all of the specifications that we've asked for. There's mandatory and desired. And we'll just see what the industry comes back with in terms of a size. The size that was quoted was kind of the one that Dan McGill thought would be the minimum requirement, you know, the minimum requirement for a building of that size.
Okay.
Eve, the request for quotation is attached to our package. And under the mandatory requirements, it says approximately 425 to 450 square feet. And then it also in brackets says approximately 12 by 36. So I would take 40 as approximately.
I don't know why he made an issue of it then. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it says in there, right? And he may take issue with the fact that it says mandatory at the top and then approximately.
Oh, well, mandatory is mandatory, so.
Yeah, but mandatory approximately, that's, you know, it's a little bit.
He's trying to go by what was said was wanted, and he made mention that that's not a standard size, and it has to be built then custom, which always costs more.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we'd certainly entertain something that may be a little bit bigger. Let's see what comes back. But if he has any questions, certainly give us a call and we can talk through it.
Thanks.
So more to follow on the RFQ. On the building permit file, I'm pleased to advise that any outstanding matters related to the building permit file for the treatment plant, the file's been closed. The CVRD is basically satisfied that you know, any inspections and process was fully completed, so that there's nothing further to report on the building permit file for the water treatment plant. And finally, with respect to the, you know, the note in the audit findings report in regards to the funding deficiency for the plant, that, of course, I'll talk about that a little later in the agenda because the report from Brian Clemens is on the agenda. And thanks very much. I think all of you have seen the report. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for speaking to Brian, and I'll address some of those issues later on in the agenda when we get to that item. The development of the 5-year capital plan. So Coors Engineering, jointly with ourselves and CVRD, have put together a scope of work proposal for really it would be quite a comprehensive water master plan for the Union Bay Improvement District area, which would basically review the entire system, you know, right from the lake surface supply, the intake, the raw water supply mains, the treatment, treated water storage reservoirs, the reducing valves, booster pumps, the distribution piping, and the pressure zones. So that is a fairly comprehensive proposal which they put together. The CVRD and ourselves, you know, primarily the CVRD, are exploring with the ministry, and this is going to be another item on the agenda for our discussion with Catherine on Tuesday, James Warren and myself, whether there's potential funding under the conversion program for this scope of work, because the CVRD is very interested in getting this done. They've asked us for whether there's a possibility for us to find some funds that we could contribute towards this project. I said, well, at this point in time, we can certainly investigate that. But basically, the CVRD and ourselves are going to be talking to the ministry about whether there's a potential source of funding coming from them, because it very much checks off, in our view, all of the boxes in terms of something that should be paid for through the conversion process. So, and this is very much a key piece, an absolute key piece to developing a 10-year capital plan, which the auditor has recommended needs to be done, the CVRD would want to be done. And even if conversion wasn't happening, I'd certainly be recommending that somehow we proceed with this work, because it's a key, huge piece in developing a capital plan. Okay.
And just to add, sorry, from what I understand, without that, we can't adjust our CEC credits.
That's
So-
absolutely correct as well.
So it's critical that this happen. Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
So depending on what Catherine says and the outcome of that, I may be back to you before conversion saying, look, in consultation with Janice, we've managed to pull a couple rabbits out of the hat, and maybe there's some potential funding that we could partner with the CVRD. I mean, realistically, they'd have to take the lion's share of the funding load for this. But maybe there's a potential source of some funding that we can put towards this project, if in fact the response from the province is no, not available this year. So more to follow on that one. And then finally, the procurement of the new fire apparatus. You'll remember at the last board meeting, Trustee Kelger was appointed to replace departing Trustee Harrelson. I've communicated that to the chief and said that, look, what I've asked him to do, it would be noting Trustee Kelger's, availability to attend, maybe one more meeting. I've asked the chief to pull together all of the information that he has at this point in time, that he's gleaned from the association and various presentations on the specifications for the new apparatus, and have at least, one final meeting of that select committee before conversion, so that ideally they could conclude its deliberations and basically present recommendations in regards to, hey, here's what we would recommend be the required specifications for this new apparatus. So Trustee Kelger, more to follow. Expect an invitation from the chief for a virtual meeting with this group, probably second week of June.
Okay. Yep.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, which will then, we'll do adoption of the reports all at the end. As one bylaw or one motion. Over to Deputy Administrator Janice Swanson for the Deputy Administrator's report.
It's a very short report. We
And
got
it
our
is in
water
your
bills
package?
done, the final water bills for Union Bay. The next ones will be done in beginning of July, and they will be CVRD bills. When you look at the budget to actual spreadsheet that is attached or included in the package, the revenue is up 22,253. Expenses are under budget by 35,000. I don't know if you have questions. You want to wait till the end of my report. So CVRD has asked us to pull a list together for all three departments with things we think should be dealt with prior to conversion. So I've got emails back from everybody, so I just have to compile it and email it to Gary to send to James. So we've just been working with the finance department, Lindsay and I. We've got a meeting, a Zoom meeting on the 25th, where we'll really get into things because there's a lot of logistics with my period ending June and I'm not continuing on. So, you know, there's going to be some wrapping up that has to be done after I've gone. So just working through it.
Okay.
Question.
Susanna?
Is there any update with regards to the RBC loan? We were going to look into to see whether they would shorten the 2-year term because there was this long delay. Do you remember?
I did send them an email and I can't remember what they responded to it. Yeah, you know, basically, I believe what they said was you can look at it at the time that they're looking at trying to change it to MFA. So I don't know. Someone through the CVRD would have to talk to RBC.
So they responded, no response is essentially the answer.
Pretty much, yes, yes.
It's still on my list for follow-up, Mr. Chairman, so we will not let it go.
Yeah, I'm not. That's interest that's being. I know it's a minor percentage, but we're broke.
I'd like to clarify that. We are not broke. We have some funding deficiencies as a result of one of the most major capital expenditures we've had, but we have ways to recover that, and our tolls and taxes are set in such a way that they easily cover the ongoing operations. So I don't want to disturb all our landowners with a
We do
Sorry,
not have
Susanna, I just
excess.
wanted to correct that.
Yeah. There are no excess funds
There are no
to
excess
just
funds, is a good way to say it.
just waste on a bureaucratic delay. So that's where I'm coming from.
Well said.
Thank you.
So that's it. That's my report, short.
I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is in revenues, which, you know, we're ahead on revenues, but we're largely ahead because of our parcel tax billings have gone out, or is there a property tax billing? Parcel taxes are out, right? So when we do our period budget, we just spread it, you know, over 12 months, right?
Mhm.
So we expect to be ahead on that revenue, but we will slowly go back to not being ahead. Yet we are behind on our operating revenues, and specifically our water tolls, but I think that's, you know, that's got the opposite effect, which is that we expect to earn the same amount of water tolls every month. And the summer is our high months, right? So we should be behind now. The question I really had about it is, do you have any initial indication that we're ahead or behind on volumes kind of thing? You know, like, is this first quarter indicative of last first quarter?
It
Just
is,
one-
it's very similar.
in terms of volume?
Yep.
And do we have any indication from the latest billing cycle as to what's happening with respect to volumes?
Oh, there's a couple more good leaks out there. Sorry, gotta grab the door. Come on, Rick. Come on. Sorry. Dog just got back from daycare. Yeah, a couple of big leaks. The volume is very similar to what it would normally be. Now, when I say leaks, those are on people's personal property. That is not in the system, you know, outside of their personal property.
It was metered, is what you're saying.
Correct, thank you. Yes.
Okay, and the second question was essentially a little more general, but you know, as you look at all of our line items, whether they be revenue or expenses, are there any that you look at and go, that gives me concern, or oh, that's great, we're way ahead on that one?
No, I just finished doing all the year-end adjustments for the 2020 year and vouching them against the trial balances. And so there is an accrual, a whole wage accrual for one pay period that I will be backing out of the expenses and offsetting against the payable, which I haven't done yet. So, you know, the expenses will be lower by one entire pay period.
And that is approximately how much?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. So I can get that to you, Ian.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense of, you know, because we, as Susanna said, we have no excess funds at this moment. We're making sure we know what we do have, right? And trying to predict where,
Yep.
where we may be.
Probably around 20,000.
So not insignificant.
No, it's significant.
Thank you.
Okay.
Eve or Susanna, any further questions?
No, thank you.
So next report is, I think, the fire chief's report, is it not? Back to the top of the scroll here. And
It
I
is,
don't think Chief Ham is here, is he?
Well, he always asks me what time he should log on to the meeting, and I said, well, I'm thinking about 3:30. So maybe we might want to just move on, and he is anticipated to be on the call by about 3:30.
Okay, so let's do the Public Works Superintendent report, which I understand he is developing some immunity today.
Yes, Dan's unable to attend because he is getting his COVID shot this afternoon. So basically, I'll just, it's a fairly simple report. He's been primarily involved in a lot of new installations, 5 of them. They are outlined in the report. I talked to him as late as this morning. The water treatment plant system is working well, and no particular issues or concerns at that point in time. In terms of water sampling and testing, everything good on that end. He's done some training and some certification, and as usual, very attuned to COVID-19 protocols are being met and updated. One, I'm sure you all folks all know about this. There was a pretty major water main break, another one. It had been quiet, I think, for the last 3 weeks, maybe, Janice, but there was a biggie around 9:45 on Monday evening, Emerton South. It was finally repaired on Tuesday. And I think Dan told me this morning they had to replace about 30 feet of pipe, 30 feet of main. Janice,
Yeah, and what's interesting is it's just a very short distance from the last huge leak.
Yes, yeah.
And it also emptied the McKay tank.
Yeah, it was a significant one. But anyway, it's been repaired. Folks were without water for a period of time, including the Union Bay store, I understand. But anyway, you know, I do have some concerns, obviously, about the distribution system. We're well aware of those. The CVRD is becoming increasingly more aware of those as we approach conversion, and they're doing more orientation and getting familiar with the system. So, Mr. Chairman, I don't have anything further to add to his report.
I will ask if there's any questions. I know Dan's not here to answer them, but we could always note them for him if anybody had any.
Certainly.
No, it's all good.
Okay, so perhaps what we'll do now is we'll have a motion to adopt the interim administrator's report, the deputy administrator's report, and the public works superintendent's report, and then move on from the fire superintendent's report for now. So motion to adopt those three reports.
So moved.
Second. Eve, you're on mute, but I saw your lips move.
That's why, sorry, it's like, I can't hear.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we'll move on to new business, and we'll have Chief Ham present his report when he's in attendance. So new business, first item, correspondence, the water leak allowance appeals again. So this is continues to have legs and life and continues to be an appeal. In addition to that, we have had a second request for reconsideration or exemption or whatever that might be to our rescinding of the allowance as of January 1st. So I'm going to turn this over to Gary as to say where we're at, and then we can debate it and discuss it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, really, there's two items of correspondence. One you've seen before. Mr. and Mrs. Gould have written. Their request was previously considered, and the board did authorize a partial allowance covering the November-December billing period. The Goulds have written back, and they've set out in their correspondence, which I think was addressed to all of you as well as myself, some of the facts pertinent to this particular issue and how it happened. So they've asked once again for a reconsideration of your previous decision. So that's the first item of correspondence. The second item is a new one from Mr. Rollison. Basically, he's asking for reimbursement for a $665 water bill he received. His father is deceased, and he's looking after his father's property on Tappan, and he's basically looking for relief from a $665 water bill for the 2-month January to February time period. And he's identified that it was related to a toilet, I believe, in the property. So, Mr. Chairman, the item is back on for your reconsideration in terms of both of these particular requests, please.
And so I think there are two very different requests with different timeframes. The original Gould request had an element that had costs associated with prior to rescinding of the bylaw, and we had previously made an exception on allowance to refund the November to December portion of that, but not the continuation into January until it was repaired. And that's the part that the Goulds continue to appeal to us on. It seems to me that the Rollison one applies post January 1st, that it is on the January and February billing. And further, and Janice, you may be able to confirm this for us, right? But it applies to a toilet, and I think our leak allowance specifically disallows toilet leaks, does it not?
That is correct.
Yeah. So that even if we had a policy in place or a leak allowance in place, this one would not have qualified. There's one last consideration I'd like to put on the table too, and this maybe moves further into it saying we have rescinded a bylaw and do we consider unrescinding it? And that is, you know, my understanding at the time, and this may have just been me that I wasn't explicit enough in terms of the questions I asked, but my understanding was that we had done research that said other jurisdictions within the Comox Valley did not have leak allowances. And so that we would be in line. It turns out that the CVRD does have a leak allowance policy. It's it's not as descriptive as ours, I would say. It says you can apply. That's what's on their website, but I'm not sure what's in the paperwork behind it, right? But I would put that on the table as well. I'm going to just break a little bit. Janice, it looked like you wanted to say something to add some information into that.
Yeah,
so I'll stop and let you do
basically
that.
CVRD, they will forgive 50% of one invoice every 2 years. So I know with the town, town of Comox, they don't have a leak allowance. I mean, I think the whole purpose of rescinding the leak allowance, there was another side to that proposal that Danny had mentioned, getting the LTE meters that can be read
Gary,
from your phone.
we may have a problem here.
Yep, Android 11 there.
It could be Ian Ham.
Is it? Okay.
It could be. He's trying to log on right now.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
There was a Hiram that was very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw a couple come in that I'm very sensitive from last time.
Yeah.
Rightly so. Yeah, so without giving the landowner or the Public Works Department the opportunity to look at the readings on screen, you know, to see, because it flags you. If there's unusual usage, you're flagged. So without having that option and with having no leak allowance, you basically have no way of dealing with landowners dealing with huge consumption.
Not entirely true, because we have made it clear that they can read the meter in between formal readings.
Yeah, it
It
doesn't
is-
flag them.
That's right. And I would just like to add that neither the CVRD or Comox or Courtney, for that matter, have consistent water meters. Believe me, this issue would be totally different if they did, and they would be at exactly the same place we are right now, which is there is a place for due diligence and responsibility on the part of the landowner, and then responsibility on the part of a public system. And we're trying to be fair about it. So there is a way for landowners to review what the meter reading is, to see if it's gone haywire. And I stand by the rescinding. I think both those jurisdictions, CVRD, as water metering increases, they will be looking at these issues just as we are. We're the leading community in that regard. So we need to be, all of us, vigilant on water leak.
So this is addressing the bigger picture discussion there. And so I'm going to narrow in on that. This is, we're talking now about our decision to rescind the leak allowance policy, right? And so Susanna, what I heard you say is, I am not in favor of revisiting that. Let's stand by what we've done. So
Yeah,
I'll
that's
ask
what
Eve
I'm
her
saying.
thoughts on this again, given where we're at and this information.
Well, I agree with Suzanne.
End of statement?
Yeah, because we check our meter. That's all you have to do is make sure
Yeah.
there's no water on. Go look at your meter. If it's not
Yeah.
moving, you're good. Very simple.
Okay, so that would say that we have a majority of the board. I don't even need to speak on it. We have a majority of the board that says we're going to stand by what we did. Now let's specifically, so the Rollison one, even if we had a policy, would not have qualified, or would not have qualified for an allowance. So I think we know how to respond to that one. And then we go back to the Gould one that their subsequent correspondence reiterates that we had a duty to warn them or to inform them of the unusual usage that we saw. Janice, may I prevail upon you, or Gord, or Gary, is it you that I should prevail upon to have that, highlight the chronology of how that all worked and the back and forths, if you will? Or should we do that in camera? I don't know. I think it's meaningful in terms of making this decision.
Well, I think that the Goulds in the package of in their correspondence on the agenda, they have basically included their previous letter as well as further arguments in regards to why they consider that they should be they should have that relief. And one of the things that they're stating is that according to them, an excessive amount of time elapsed between the time when this was first noted by union-based staff, and then union-based staff got around to notifying them of the leak. That appears to be and Janice is in a better position, I think, to sort of explain the chronology of how this went down.
With the
But
Gould?
that
Yes.
seems to be the primary thing that they're asking for relief on in terms of the reason, the amount of time.
Here we go again.
Gonna be a
Yeah.
problem.
Watch Hiram there. Can you force mute or remove, like if Hiram can tell us who he is and where he lives, we can leave him on the call. And if he can't do that, I think we have to remove him.
I think he's gone again,
Gone.
Okay.
but Android 11 is still there.
That's not Ian Ham.
Well, it could be anybody,
Yeah.
and perhaps if Android 11 would identify themselves and where they live, then we can allow them.
They're gone. This is so upsetting, and I would like to see our IT people block their IP addresses. There's a way to
Yeah.
do it.
I don't know if those people were disruptive. We asked who they were and they left, and that may have
I'm
just been their
talking
own
about
privacy, right?
The previous, there is a way to trace those IP addresses of the previous people, and those people should be blocked on the one at the last meeting.
Right. Okay, so back to refocus on here. We were with Janice here to say what
Janice,
the chronology was.
Can you just recount the issue that the Goulds seem to be talking about in terms of the process between the time when we identify that there's a leak and then we notify the property owner in this particular instance?
So the meters were read the beginning of January. Their excess was huge. So that for November, December, it was basically a $2,000 bill. So by the time we read, I download the reads, I do the calcs and look at consumption. We're probably 2 weeks into January by that point. I go on our system to find their email or telephone number. We don't have updated information, so I can't get them. So I got a hold of Danny. Danny got over to their house. Now, what was interesting about it, they had a huge bulge in their grass that he could see from the road, and that was the leak. So
there was visible evidence of a leak.
yeah, it was obvious. So by the time he got a hold of them and let them know, and then they got it repaired, it had already created another excess bill of over $2,000.
And to date, we have credited them approximately 50% of the total amount they requested.
They would have got the average
Yeah.
billing. So it would have been more than 50%, I'm sure.
Okay.
When your average is $100 or $90.
Right. But it would have been for the November, December period,
Correct.
not the January period.
Correct.
Yes. So half of what they asked for.
Do they not live on the property? I don't remember.
They
They
do
do.
live on the property.
Okay, well, Okay.
So we did rescind this thing as of January 1st. There is some argument, we've been through this before, and I think we just need to go through it again, right? That it is a continuous leak and that our process does not allow us to identify that there has been excess usage until halfway through the month following the billing period. There was evidence of a leak that was physically there for the Goulds to notice, and they do have the capability of reading their meter. There is, it's obviously it's a hardship, right? The other part of this from my perspective is when we rescinded this, it was on the basis of not having other landowners fund failing infrastructure of individual landowners, so that it made individual landowners responsible for maintaining their infrastructure. So I wanted to review it one more time. This has been, obviously a very pressing issue for the Goulds, something that is important to them, and they continue to communicate to us and continue to express that they believe we have responsibility in this. I would suggest that there may have been one point that we may have missed an opportunity to support the Goulds, and that would be at meter reading time. If there was a visible bulge in the lawn, that our meter reader could have noticed it and notified them at that point in time, which would have perhaps cleaned it up a couple of weeks earlier. So that is one thing that we didn't do as an organization here. So I guess we should just revisit one more time. Are we satisfied with the decision we made to credit up to December 31st and to not credit beyond December 31st? Or because of circumstances, are we willing to reconsider? And that's the question before us.
I think we've considered it thoroughly and fairly. It is not the job of our staff to review property, like to actually examine an area of private property to see whether it looks suspicious or not. January is historically, and this January was as well, exceptionally rainy. So I don't think we didn't do anything here. I think Union Bay staff did everything correctly to the best of their ability. It is clearly a hardship, and for that we're sorry, truly, but I don't feel we did anything wrong, and I do not feel the need to rescind but I think the intention and purpose of rescinding it is still the way to go. Thank you.
Eve?
I concur.
Okay.
I don't think we need to change anything.
So we're not seeing how we're not changing anything. I don't think we need to do any motions or anything else. We're just staying where we're staying. Gary, do you agree with that?
Well, Mr. Chairman, you could put a motion on the floor that you just reaffirm your previous decision in regards to this particular matter, so that the Goulds at least know that you did, consider it again.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that is leak allowance correspondence. Back to the top. Oh, it's a big package, Gary. Lots of stuff this time. Okay, memorandum from the fire chief, which is a request to amend the 2021 Union Bay Fire Rescue budget, salary and wage remuneration for the paid on-call paid practice program. So over to Gary and Janice, whoever is most appropriate here, to describe the issue and what we may need to do about it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll just lead off here. Basically, we've discovered that there is a gap of about $11,128 in the salary wage remuneration for the paid on-call paid practice program. And this has been brought to our attention by the fire chief. And he's requesting that an amendment to the departmental budget be made to reinstate the full amount and basically close that gap. Really, there's no process to, other than by a motion, to basically support this and instruct Janice to revise the documents accordingly. There's really no process in a municipal environment. You'd bring forward a budget amendment bylaw, but that doesn't apply to improvement districts. So we're just bringing this to your attention. There is a shortfall of 11,000 approximately in the wage remuneration for the paid on-call paid practice program. And moving forward, the chief considers that this is an important, because of course, post-conversion, he wants to make sure that he has the fullest complete budget documents that are available to transition to the CVRD. So really, if you're supportive of this, all we simply need is a motion to make that adjustment. And obviously, it would be funded from some sort of an accumulated surplus that will be in a better position to know later on in the year in regards to UBID's budget.
Or not, if there is no accumulated surplus. So given where we're at with respect to having funded a lot of the initial contracts on the water plant construction out of operations, that there is a limited operational surplus at this point in time. So this may need to be considered as part of the that document that we received from the consultant as well, to say how do we adjust for all of this to get ourselves back into a good spot.
But I think it is important to pass a motion so that it's documented for the record, so that the CVRD is aware of this moving forward.
Okay. Is there, do we know how this, or what happened that would cause this? Was it just in our process? Was there something that changed?
No,
Was it the-
basically, we had to prepare the budget to get submitted to the province at end of October.
Yeah.
Well, this 2020 was the first year that the volunteers got paid for practice and on call. So we didn't know what that number was, and they get paid once a year, and it was at the end of December.
And that's what this number is?
Well, we had upped the budget a bit, so that number is actually $30,000 difference, but we had upped the budget, so we covered most of it. We're just short by about
Okay.
11,
So it was,
128.60.
it was an estimating error on our part
Yeah.
as to how much that would be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good clarity.
Well, so moved. I moved that motion. Or I move it,
Okay.
whatever
Second.
Gary said.
Second,
Okay, any further discussion of this one? Eve? Okay, all in favor?
good.
Say aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Oh, shoot, I just closed the thing. Okay, so next item is the report from our consultant on the water treatment plant funding. So Gary, you've been spearheading this one. I will turn it over to you again.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of details, spend a lot of time on this at this point in time. First off, thanks to each of you. I believe each of you did speak to Brian at least once. And thanks for getting any comments back in a timely fashion, because I wanted to make best efforts to get this on the agenda today, so it's out there and it's transparent. As you know, you've all seen this report before. It has been, there's been a couple of little tweaky amendments made based on your comments, but nothing substantial since the first draft. So this is the final version. As you know, he's made best efforts to sort out to set forward the sequence of events leading to this during the period when the water treatment plant was being constructed and various approvals were being required for funding. He's also got a section on the lessons learned moving forward, in terms of perhaps some things that could have been considered or should have been done. And the most important section, to my mind, is moving forward. And I should advise that the CVRD were given an opportunity to review the draft, as the ministry, and they were given the opportunity to provide any comments, so they're aware of this. And this will very much be the subject, another topic for our discussion next week with the ministry and with the CVRD. But in my view, the most important section is moving forward. Okay, so what are some of the things that we need to do? We being collectively UBIT as well as CVRD, obviously, moving forward. Brian set out a number of things that they're options, but also things that he strongly recommends need to be addressed. We need to relook at the CEC charges. Trustee Kelger brought that up just earlier in the meeting. Last time they were looked at was 2014. And that's why the water master planning stuff is so important to get that piece in place. Brian also mentions that water connection charges should be relooked at. The last time that they were updated, I understand, is 2004. He mentions the B parcels issue. That is something, obviously, in terms of relooking at the parcel charges as a source of funding to address shortfall issues. That's certainly timely. And of course, we're positioning ourselves to be in a position to relook at not only the amount of the parcel charges, but who should be also paying and on the tax roll. He mentions the issue of decommissioning the old plant and that no costs have been determined at this point in time. Dan has requested some quotations for that, and he has one quotation in, I believe, to give us a better estimate of the order of magnitude costs that we're looking at. Brian also talks about the washroom issue. We're hoping that we're going to get some proposals back that I can take to the board in June before conversion, with a recommendation to award a contract. The obvious question is, okay, how are we going to pay for it? There's a couple of options that Brian has indicated there. There is a water restricted renewal fund in the amount of $550,000. Now, keep in mind the whole issue of, the shortfall in our various reserves, but there is a water restricted renewal fund that we could take the money out of that fund. It would be permissible. My understanding is that the inspector's approval would not be required for this. This is one of those bylaw exemptions where the inspector's approval is not required. That's a potential source of funding for the plan. And also, of course, the issue of borrowing, additional borrowing, taking out a loan, and increasing our borrowing for the plant. So as I say, the CVRD has been given a copy of this. They've reviewed it from their financial perspective, and we're going to be certainly exploring these things with the ministry next week and with the CVRD. So really, I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chairman. I think, in my opinion, it was a good piece of work. I think it's understandable, and he's made best efforts based on the information that he's reviewed to sort of document the history and things that were looked at, things that weren't, things that could have been done a little bit better, and moving forward, making some adjustments moving forward in terms of future expenditures such as this. So really, at this point in time, Mr. Chairman, I would just recommend a motion to formally receive, and it's up on the website. It's part of the agenda package. It's public knowledge.
Okay. And would you, beyond the formal receiving of this report, do you have further guidance for the board in terms of what, what we should do about it. Like, so I know we're, in the event that we were a going concern, that we were not converting, we would certainly be debating this. Do we need to provide some degree of guidance or desired approach to the CVRD? And if we do, what would that look like?
Yeah, good point. And the CVRD has kind of asked me in my final report in June, or whenever, I could do it in conjunction with the final board meeting, or certainly before June 30th, to kind of put together a state of the nation report. Okay, so here's where we are at with all of these particular issues, the strategic priorities, right? But also an issue such as this. And, I'd want the opportunity to further discuss with the CVRD things like, okay, what approach would they be prepared to take on, for example, B parcels, which is part of this report? And some of these options that Brian's talked about, what are they prepared to, how do they see the world in terms of next steps moving forward? So I need to have, my last month, I need to have pretty fulsome discussions with the CVRD and with the ministry. And this would be part of my, state of the nation final report. If there's any particular, first thoughts, I guess, from the board at this point in time, on some of these options that Brian has talked about, and some of there really are recommendations from him in terms of CECs and water connection charges and partial charges. Hey, we have to relook at all those. But if there's any first thoughts from the board in terms of, we don't want it, for example, we're not interested in taking any further money out of reserves. We're just more in principle supportive of additional borrowing. That would be good for me to know at this point in time, because I can take those messages forward to the CVRD and to the ministry.
Okay, so I think first off, let's do the motion to receive the report, and then let's process our thoughts and guidance for CVRD after that. All right,
So
okay, second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so discussion, we don't have a motion or anything on the table here, right? But discussion of what are our thoughts with respect to moving on from here and the actions that should be taken to, first off, restore our reserves so that they're fully funded, and secondly, whether we need to establish any further returns to reserves given infrastructure challenges that may be coming down the road in terms of replacing our distribution system and paying for washrooms and offices and all those sorts of things, right? So I have my ideas, but I think I'll hold them back and ask Eve and Susanna to contribute first where you think we should be coming from here.
I would like to hear from you, Ian, because I really don't know. So if you've got some ideas, I'd like to hear yours.
I have a question for Janice, if she's still there. Janice, what's our loan payment to RBC for the plant?
Well, 15,000.
15,000 a month?
Yeah.
I'm just doing a quick bit of math here. I lost it. Here's my thoughts, right? Is we're moving down the path of authorizing parcel taxes for B parcels. And we have to kind of estimate how many B parcels will be eligible to be charged. And we haven't done all of that work yet. I'm using a number in my mind based on the information that we've reviewed so far, that it's 50 or more, right? And 50 or more B parcels at our current parcel tax rate generates $20,000 a year of additional revenues, right? And this is the math, just bear with me. If I do that math using Janice's $15,000 number.
Can you change that number?
I sure can.
I'm just looking at April and it was 16,937.
So 17.
And that every month's the same, right?
Ish, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
17.
bear with me one sec. I have to start again. So just rough math. 50 B parcels funds an additional $340,000 of debt. And so $340,000 of debt could be allocated to say, hey, cover the surplus or the deficit, which is about $35,000. Cover the office and washroom, which we don't know what that is yet, but if I use a number like 140 or say 140, that's $175,000. And so $350,000 is pretty much double that. And that allows us to put some funds that we withdrew from operating surplus to pay for the water plant back into reserves and to start to establish a reserve base that is still nowhere near adequate to cover the replacement of the distribution system. But the distribution system, it's going to require grants and debt, and there's a whole funding thing that hasn't happened there yet, right? But I don't feel good that over the past two boards, and certainly we were a part of it with budgeting process this time, but the lack of clarity around how the plant was funded has now come to light, right? And that we probably didn't fully understand the implications of that reading the financial statements last year and those sorts of things. But I don't feel good about leaving the reserves where they're at. And if we do have a means to reestablish some revenue stream, right? Some without impacting existing landowners further, that I'm thinking of using that as a guidepost to say, how do we get there, right? And maybe we don't actually say $350,000 of debt. Maybe what we say is, once we we want to proceed with B parcels, we want to proceed with charging as many B parcels as are legitimately responsible or should legitimately be charged. And that when that number is established, that we reverse engineer how much debt we can place to return up to $1.1 million to the reserves, right? And you could even make that number bigger. I could say 1.1 plus the cost of the washroom, because that's still a capital improvement to the plant. But we're never going to get there with just B parcels. It's going to be some number like $250,000 to $500,000 that B parcels will fund in terms of debt. So that's my thinking. And I'll leave it at that for Susanna and Eve to comment on or ask me questions about weird math or whatever.
Well, thank you, Ian. I support your idea. I understand where you're coming from. And the only way I would support taking on additional funding as a means to achieve that goal would be if we can straighten out this whole 2-year lag before we convert to MCD. Because it sounds like you're renegotiating the RBC loan, which is fine, but we need to shorten that cost there.
I wonder if this is somewhat unrelated, because what we're really doing is providing CVRD direction here, and because we're not going to be able to place that debt, that I'm pretty sure that we would get stopped from doing that, right? And then once it's CVRD, they're eligible for MFA.
Right.
Right. So that
would
be
automatically
separately,
not go through.
right?
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. Thank
and
you.
We deal with the RBC administrative delays separately.
Okay.
Because we placed a 2-year debt there, thinking that would be the right timing for an MFA flip anyways, right? And so this just delayed it 6 months or whatever, 8 months.
Yeah.
So I think they're unrelated.
Yes, I agree. Okay, I'm still supportive of your proposal.
Eve, your thoughts?
So I just wanted to clarify what you said, Ian. You want to use, you say up to 50 B parcels or whatever it is, can fund 300 and something $1,000 in debt? I mean,
Approximately,
with
yeah.
it's about $20,000 a year in revenue.
Right, and if just using
Okay,
our existing loan as an example, and in fact, an MFA loan would probably be a lower rate by about 0.5%, so we could probably fund slightly more, but so the 350 is a rough number for 50 B parcels.
so,
If we
and
had
so take a
75 B
loan,
parcels, it could be 120, or it could be 500,000, right?
so take a loan, you mean,
Exactly.
for that?
And to restore the backing of our reserves, if you will.
And because we cannot raise parcel tax, well, we can't raise any rates the rest of this year, correct?
True. And
So
we've,
that-
and essentially under my proposal, we wouldn't do that anyways, right?
Right.
We would kind of wait this through till next year and say, so we're going to end up coming out of this year with an operating deficit, or we may decide that we want to take a two-stage plan that says temporarily we will withdraw from the water reserves.
Mhm. So
And we will reestablish liquidity in our reserves, right? They'll be funded, and then the beginning of next year, we will do this B parcel. We want to do this B parcel new loan placement that will reestablish, good funding in our reserves, or of our reserves. Sorry.
Yeah, so if we took a loan now, or we would have the money to pay that extra loan off? Where would the money come from to pay the bill for the loan?
It would come from B parcels.
But we're not charging them yet.
Right. So what I am proposing is that we would do that loan
At the same time.
at 2022.
I think that's about our only choice, really. There's no other, we can't raise revenue any other way. So we need to loan, and I don't want to drain, like you say, the money that's in the reserves.
Yeah, Gary, perhaps you can answer this. How would it be if we don't respond to the auditor's recommendation, or if our response is we'll fix it in 2022, will that be okay?
But I think so. Yeah, there was no particular time frame given. He just indicated that, hey, you've got this issue, and there's any number of options that you need to pursue to start to address it. And he mentioned additional borrowing. He mentioned B parcels, money out of reserves, that type of thing. So
Increased tolls, yeah.
Yeah, this is what we're doing.
I mean,
No, it's not something that has to be addressed, by 2022, but this is a good discussion in terms of a potential strategy to start moving in that direction. Absolutely. And we got to start addressing it in 2022.
mhm.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Even, yeah,
really, the biggest mistake that was made, I think, the biggest mistake that was made in the last 3 or 4 years was they should have been raising these rates and parcel taxes so that we didn't find ourselves in this situation. So I think really, I like your idea. It's I think the only viable option.
well, what I do like about it is that it does not impact existing landowners. Of course, it does. Well, that's not a true statement.
Yeah, it certainly will.
It impacts B parcel landowners. It does not impact those who are currently paying parcel and and tolls, right?
But the simple fact is whoever, our rates are going to go up every year for the next several years.
And hopefully volumes also go up, and that, the overheads associated with the plant don't go up at the same rate, so that we won't have double the staffing when we have double the volume. And, our when we double the size of the plant, we're not doubling the size of the building, we're just adding another filter in, or, we are adding more building, but, it's not the full infrastructure of the place. So, hopefully that our cost of producing water goes down over time, just because of efficiencies, right? So there's some offset coming along there as well, I hope. But we don't know that yet.
No.
We don't know that yet.
We certainly don't.
So I think, we're getting to this point of, we can't move to borrow money. I think what a motion that we can put together is what we want to communicate to CVRD. And the motion would be to have the interim administrator communicate to CVRD the desire for B parcels to be added to the parcel tax roll commencing January 1st, 2022. And that based on the number of B parcels added, that a commensurate loan be placed, a borrowing be placed to reestablish higher reserve levels for our water facility.
So moved.
And a second for that?
Second.
Anybody want to debate, amend, change that? Gary, any comments before we vote on it?
No, I think it's a good motion, Mr. Chairman, and it's timely. I can start communicating that to the CVRD next week when we have and with the ministry. I think it's a good motion, and they clearly now, I think, understand better, the CVRD does, after the last couple of meetings with the conversion working group, the importance of the B parcel file, and that it's something that clearly needs to be advanced and move forward. So no, it's a good motion. I understand it, and I can certainly communicate that to them starting next week.
Okay.
I have just one question. Are we going to end this year in a deficit?
I don't know if we know the answer to that, right? As of right now, we have an operating surplus, but there's still lots of ups and downs to go, right?
Right.
Any further questions, comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor of the motion as stated?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, back to the agenda. Where am I going to find you? Right here. Okay, so we're on to bylaws.
Mr. Chairman, the fire chief is
Oh,
now
that's right.
meeting.
I am sorry, Ian. I saw you come in and I just slid right by there. So we are going to back up and we are going to receive the fire chief's report.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and hello, everyone. My report for April, I noticed in my incident summary, I put March there. That I apologize, that's for April. As you can see, our calls for April were down pretty low. Still put a few hours, staff hours out there, but calls were low that month. Department initiatives. I had a meeting with the CVRD and a bunch of their managers and our CAO, or interim CAO, and was given my notice of termination of employment with UBID for July 1st. The deputy received his on April 30th. We're still moving forward with the transition at our level, working with the association to prepare our bylaws and align everything with the CVRD, so the transition goes a little easier, and our constitution, and that's all ready to go. Continuing to meet with the other fire chiefs in the CVRD weekly. We had a presentation from James Bast and the Oyster River Fire Chief, and Ian Emery, who is the chair of their association, and they presented some ideas about the role of the association in the new model. We're continuing to upgrade or put our operational guidelines in line with the CVRD. I continue to meet with Gary weekly. The Chiefs Association for the Comox Valley Fire Chiefs Association was this month. That was on Monday. Of course, I attended the annual general meeting with you guys. I did a individual check-in with all the fire department members over the last little bit, and that proved to be quite enlightening. And I'm happy I did that. I got a lot of good information out of that. Our training, we're continuing to work through the COVID-19 issues. Just primarily focusing on our 1001 training and getting our recruits up to a usable level. The papers dropped on me, they're all out of order here. Coastal fire bans, we're still in a pretty good shape, but as you can see, or you hear on the news that it's drying up pretty quick. We can expect to probably get into some bans fairly quickly. We're not currently under any now, but training again, like I said, we're maintaining or focusing on our recruit training in the 1001 level 2, staying within the COVID protocols. We have a start course that was canceled for April. It is being rescheduled. We just don't know when. We did some wildland fire training that was put on by Oyster River, and they offered it to us for free. So that was nice. And we got some, I think, 6 members through that. That was good. The vehicles, not too bad. We had a tire repair and leaky air valve that had to be replaced. The 6 sets of turnout gear actually arrived today, so that was convenient. We're still at 22 members. The rat problem, we had to get a trap set up, and it seems to be doing its job. We had a company provide the bait and stuff like that, so it's all environmentally friendly and it doesn't kill any other animals and stuff like that. We were adamant about that, but it seems to be dealing with the problem for us. We have a spring cleanup coming. I think next weekend is our get together. We're going to do it over a couple of different weekends so that we're not gathering in large groups and take care of some of the issues around the hall. We haven't had any health and safety issues at this time, although our health and safety committee still meets and does their thing, but we just haven't had any incidents, which is good. Public relation wise, in April, we did our Easter drive. That seemed to be pretty well received again. We got some donations from our guys, our water guys, and their new CUPE Local 556. They donated $500 to the water, or to the fire department. And we publicized that as best we could. And we're still recruiting. We can take on 30 members. We have 22, so we have some room. And that is my report, sir.
Thank you, Chief Ham. Any questions for Ian? Thank you very much, Ian. It's, as always, a thorough report. So motion to adopt Ian's report. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Susanna, I assume you said aye.
I did, yeah.
You're on mute, so. Okay, so we are now back to the top. On to bylaws. So the Fire Department Renewal Reserve Fund Disbursement Bylaw 290, a bylaw to authorize the allocation of $31,500 for the purchase of new and replacement NFPA turnout gear, replacement of high volume fire hoses and replacement parts, and bottles for MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. So Gary, perhaps you could set the stage for us on this one before we do readings.
Well, this was a small item that was noted by the auditor in last year's financial statements, and a recommendation on his part. Back in it was February of 2020, the board approved a motion to basically allocate about $31,000 from the fire department capital reserve fund for the purchase of new and replacement clothing and equipment as follows: some turnout gear, some high volume fire hoses, some replacement parts and bottles, and yeah, so those were the three items. A lot of that has already happened, if not happened, but really technically what is needed is a small bylaw to authorize that money to come out of the capital reserve fund. So this bylaw is basically catching up on a motion that you made last year in February. And simply, if you give readings this evening, it basically is just filed with the ministry. And I've alerted them to this. There's another one that you passed 3 weeks ago, I think, for some additional turnout gear. And I'll also send that down at the same time. So really what it is it's kind of a statutory item to just clean up an issue that was picked up in the audit, so that we're
Okay.
on good terms with the ministry.
Okay, so let's have a first reading, which, is a no debate reading that we then move to accept the bylaw and then vote on it. And then we have a second reading to debate it. So bylaw number 290, 2021 Fire Department Renewal Reserve Fund Disbursement Bylaw. A bylaw to authorize the disbursement of monies in the Fire Department Renewal and Replacement Reserve Fund. Whereas there is an unappropriated balance in the Fire Department Restricted Renewal Reserve Fund of $1,579,554 as of March 31st, 2021. And whereas it is deemed desirable to expend a portion of the monies imposed under Bylaw 64 Renewal Reserve Fund for new and replacement NFPA turnout gear for new and existing fire department members, replacement of high volume fire hoses, and for replacement parts and bottles for MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. Therefore, the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District duly enact as follows. 1, the sum of $31,500 is hereby appropriated from the Fire Rescue Renewal Reserve Fund to be expended towards the purchase of new and replacement NFPA turnout gear for new and existing fire department members, replacement of high volume fire hoses, and for replacement parts and bottles for MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. 2, the expenditure to be carried out by the monies hereby appropriated shall be more particularly specified and authorized by resolution of the trustees. 3, should any of the above amounts remain unexpended after the expenditures hereby authorized have been made, any unexpected balance shall be returned to the credit of the said reserve fund. And 4, this bylaw may be cited as the 2021 Fire Department Renewal Reserve Fund Disbursement Bylaw 290. So motion to pass or to accept this bylaw.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so second reading of the bylaw. Oh, get back to the top here. Bylaw number 290, 2021 Fire Department Renewal Reserve Fund Disbursement Bylaw. A bylaw to authorize the disbursement of monies in the Fire Department Renewal and Replacement Reserve Fund. Whereas there is an unappropriated balance in the Fire Department Restricted Renewal Reserve Fund of $1,579,554 as of March 31st, 2021. And whereas it is deemed desirable to expend a portion of the monies imposed under bylaw number 64 Renewal Reserve Fund for new and replacement NFPA turnout gear for new and existing fire department members, replacement of high volume fire hoses, and for replacement parts and bottles for MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. Therefore, the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District duly enact as follows. the sum of $31,500 is hereby appropriated from the Fire Rescue Renewal Reserve Fund to be expended towards the purchase of new and replacement NFPA turnout gear for new and existing fire department members, replacement of high volume fire hoses, and for replacement parts and bottles for MSA self-contained breathing apparatus. 2, the expenditure to be carried out by the monies hereby appropriated shall be more particularly specified and authorized by resolution of the trustees. 3, should any of the above amounts remain unexpended after the expenditures hereby authorized have been made, any unexpended balance shall be returned to the credit of the said reserve fund. 4, this bylaw may be cited as the 2021 Fire Department Renewal Reserve Fund Disbursement Bylaw 290. Motion to pass this bylaw.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion, debate, questions?
Nope.
All in favor of this bylaw, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, next. We have a bylaw, number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw, 2005. Sorry, I'm confused here. Bylaw number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, Bylaw 192, amending Bylaw number 1. A bylaw to amend the definition of Group A parcel classification.
This is the B parcels bylaw, Mr. Chairman,
Correct.
as drafted by the solicitor.
Right. So I was just confused by the wording there. All right. So I will do a first reading again for us to accept this bylaw for consideration. Bylaw number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, Bylaw number 192, amending Bylaw number 1. A bylaw to amend the 8th Assessment Bylaw number 192, 2005. Whereas the Union Bay Improvement District has authority under Section 698 of the Local Government Act to establish the basis of the assessment of land, the value of land and improvements, and the method to be followed by the assessor in classifying land in the district for assessment purposes. And whereas the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District wish to amend the 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, Bylaw number 192, in order to alter the method for classifying a parcel as Group A. Now, therefore, the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District in open meeting assembled enact as followed. Citation. Number 1, this bylaw can be cited for all purposes as bylaw number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, bylaw number 192, amending bylaw number 1. So amendment of Group A parcel classification. Number 2, the 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, number 192 is amended by A, deleting the semicolon and the word "and" from the end of section 6A and substituting a period, and B, deleting section 6B in its entirety. Okay, so motion to accept this bylaw.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so second reading, in which we will then debate and discuss whether to pass it. So bylaw number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, bylaw number 192, amending bylaw number 1, a bylaw to amend the 8th Assessment Bylaw number 192, 2005. Whereas the Union Bay Improvement District has authorized under section 698 of the Local Government Act to establish the basis of the assessment of land, the value of land and improvements, and the method to be followed by the assessor in classifying land in the district for assessment purposes. And whereas the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District wish to amend the 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, bylaw number 192, in order to alter the method for classifying a parcel as Group A. Now, therefore, the trustees of the Union Bay Improvement District in open meeting assembled and act as follows. Citation. 1, This bylaw may be cited for all purposes as bylaw number 291, 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, bylaw number 192, amending bylaw number 1. Amendment of Group A parcel classification. Item 2, the 8th Assessment Bylaw 2005, number 192 is amended by A, deleting the semicolon and the word "and" from the end of section 6A and substituting a period, and B, deleting section 6B in its entirety. So motion to pass this bylaw.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any questions, debate, discussion?
No, we've had a pretty thorough review. Very helpful to have the legal language written correctly. I'm ready to vote.
And this has a substantial backing from a legal opinion, which says that we have the process in the right order, that says we do this now, and we instruct CVRD in what we're trying to accomplish for them to move forward with B parcels in 2022.
Yeah.
Eve, any comment from you or questions or thoughts?
No, I'm reading this article in the paper right now, so sorry.
Steve!
Thanks, Mike Schwinard.
Mike's on this call.
Yeah, nervy little bastard, isn't he?
So all in favor, say aye.
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 And I really appreciate all the work. This was tricky. This was complicated. This was really important. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, so unfinished business, was with respect to the, the conversion process report and the UB strategic priorities. My sense is that we have covered those off already in previous agenda items. Any need to discuss them further?
I have nothing further to add, Mr. Chairman. No.
All right, so that brings us to the end of the formal agenda and to a point where we will accept landowner questions.
Mr.
Sorry?
Chairman, the one late item.
Oh, thank you very much. I forgot about the late item. So on Tuesday at our open house, and it was actually an email question that came in prior to the open house that was read and responded to there, was, and I'll just paraphrase, is there any plan or interest in having what was referred to as a hand over the keys ceremony, where there is a formal transfer of sort of authority, whatever the right word is, to CVRD for the purpose of thanking all of those who have served over the 61 years that the Union Bay Improvement District has been in operation, and to thank our staff for the work that they've done. And I'd say secondarily, to give an opportunity for landowners to meet certain personnel from the CVRD and put faces to names. So that was the proposal, and I responded at that meeting to say I thought it was a good idea and that I would bring it to the board for consideration and discussion. So here we are. Prior to any motion or anything like that, I've expressed myself on it. Susanna and Eve would love to hear from you as to what your thoughts are about this as an activity.
I have no objection. It certainly seems to make sense, and why not? I think it would highlight, and I have to say personally, the cooperation between the CVRD and the UBID Improvement District staff and political has worked very well. So I think it shows the landowners that this is not in any way an antagonistic relationship whatsoever. So yeah, sounds good to me.
Eve?
Well, I'm okay with it either way.
Yeah. I have, there's an obvious thing we haven't said yet, right, which is subject to the prevailing health restrictions and guidelines at the time as to how many people can be in attendance at an outdoor gathering and all those sorts of things. I would presume by June 30th that we would have lesser restrictions for outdoor gatherings, but I think we have to have that as a subject to. My other question might be towards Janice or Gary, which is, do we know who all the trustees and chairs have been for the past 61 years? Is there a record of such thing?
Oh, gosh. Ooh. I don't know how readily and quickly available a simple record would be.
Yeah.
Probably ways to search it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a nice to have. It would be great to, to recognize even in just, a report or in something we post on our website that would say thanks to all those who have served, right? And we can just say it without names, but it would be great to have names.
The ministry may have something, so I can talk to Catherine next week on our big meeting on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I'll pursue it. I'll see what the ministry may have.
Yeah.
I can do a search of our folders to see whether there's a document in there that
Yeah.
has been, kept up to date over the years. I don't know, but I'll also raise
Yeah.
it with the ministry. They may have something, in their system.
Janice, I saw you look at me sideways. Does that mean like not a chance?
That would be my thought. Yeah.
Oh. It's a small community. They were always 4-year terms. I'm sure it's doable.
Yeah. So what I'd suggest is we pass a motion to authorize the administrator to arrange for a hand over the keys ceremony. I would suggest at the Union Bay offices on June 30th.
We are moving out of the office on the 25th.
That's okay.
The empty office.
We still rent it till the 30th, right? It doesn't matter. It's still where we moved from.
So moved.
Second,
Okay. Well,
all in favor, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye.
yeah.
Okay, so that ends our formal agenda, and I would like to open the microphones to any landowners who may have questions. You may go. So Mary, I am uncertain exactly what that is, but I can almost certainly tell you what he was referring to, which would be the CECs from the upcoming, what's the right phrase? The subdivision approvals that are upcoming. There's like 43 lots, I think, that are being approved. And if you multiply 43 by the $8,900, it comes very, very close to $400,000. So I think that's what Ted was referring to, and that it wasn't to come as a check, it would come in amounts as the parcels are connected or as CECs are paid. Absolutely, and it's, in fact, in the water infrastructure agreement, it's actually sort of used to go towards the second DAF unit as we hit that limit, right? The limit of the number the first DAF unit can support. Questions from anyone else? I will loop back. Mary, do you have any further questions? Okay. Thank you. All right, so I guess the last item on the agenda is a notice of upcoming board meetings where there's a regular committee of the whole meeting on June 3rd, 2021 at 2:30 p.m. meeting to be conducted via Zoom. So if there's nothing else, then can we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Yep. All in favor?
All in favor,
Aye.
say aye.
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 Aye, aye.
Okay, thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you, Ian, Janice, Gary.
You.
Thanks, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.